So we successfully completed our first pass of cultivation, and we're in the shop today getting the cultivator prepared for second pass. Now we were fortunate enough that the corn grew quickly and the weeds didn't provide much competition, so we only ran that one pass. But we've made it through our first pass of beans, and they're getting big enough now that we're going to go ahead and start second pass, as most of the acres are going to need it. Now there's not a whole lot of changes we're going to make to the cultivator in the shop today. Most of those adjustments need to be done in the field, but we're primarily going to focus on the width of the cutaway discs. That is really the only major change I'm going to make today. There are several you can make if your cultivator is set differently than mine, and I'll discuss them as we go through the machine. Now, as you know, I like to run 6 to 6.5 inches between the front leading edge of the cutaway discs on my first pass, so I do a good job of getting in close proximity to the row and pulling the weeds away. Now that I've moved on to second pass, I'm going to go ahead and widen these out to roughly 8 to 8.5 inches so that I'm not trimming too many leaves or roots. Now, I moved every individual cutaway disc away from the row as needed when I was in first pass in case any were favoring. So I know I have them pretty well centered over the row from where I like them. So I'm not going to go ahead and recenter them to 8 and 8.5. I'm simply just going to move each cutaway disc 1 inch away from the row. So I'll loosen each bracket up and move it 1 inch away towards the middle of the frame so that I get away from the center of the row.
Now, one of the other adjustments that we can make in the shop, depending on how your cultivator is set up from first pass, is to pitch this foot bracket back. Now, I have my foot bracket pitched back about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch behind the flush with the front edge of the shank, all the way across the cultivator. So that's where I like to run it for first pass, ideally, if the ground is not too hard. But if you've had to pitch your sweep forward to get better ground penetration, now is a great time to move it back, because we generated a lot of nice loose soil on that first pass, and now we're just going to continue to try to work with that and not go any deeper. So if we were flush on the front edge of the shank, I would take this opportunity to move each of these foot brackets so that it pitched the sweep backwards, and we were behind flush about 1/4 of an inch or so, maybe a little less behind the tires or any places where there's a large amount of compaction.
Now the shields are going to be something we need to adjust for the second pass, but it's not something I typically do in the shop because it's going to be on a need-be basis based on how large your crop is and how much dirt you need to throw into the row. Now, I don't typically widen the shields apart for second pass, as I have figured out that the crops seem to flow through even when they're larger because of the nice flares on the front of the shields. It helps to get the crop through, and keeping them nice and tight helps to get the soil up underneath those leaves and do a great job of burying weeds. So I will go ahead and lift these, but I'm not going to do that in the shop today. Now, depending on how many acres you run for your first pass, I find now is a great time to look at the cultivator closely and make sure nothing's starting to come apart. So I've actually gone through this cultivator already, and everything looks pretty good. But because we ran so many acres in our first pass, I actually am going to take the opportunity while we're in the shop to throw a level on the stabilizer disc and make sure it's still running true to the row. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw a wrench on each of the axle bolts and just make sure that they haven't loosened up and that stabilizer isn't getting any play in it, or the eccentric bushings are starting to turn. Because if they get out of sync, then we start to side load the bearings, and it doesn't take long before we've ruined them.
So all I'm doing is placing this magnetic level on the side of the stabilizer disc and sighting it down to the gauge tire to see if it's running true to the row. Now, I don't know if you can see it very well in this video, but this is actually favoring the right side. So I stick it to this side and I see that it's not quite flush with the edge of the tire. And then I'll go ahead and I'll stick it to the other side and recognize that it's sticking out past flush on the other side. I will then adjust my stabilizer eccentrics so that I can get this pitched so it's running correctly and true with the row.
If you need any other clarification about adjusting the stabilizer disc or any other piece of the equipment, I hope you stay tuned because we're going to be putting out a whole lot of videos about each of the pieces of the equipment and how to adjust them properly, how to fix them, how to replace parts, and everything that you need to know about Buffalo cultivators. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, I appreciate you sticking around. If I missed anything, feel free to drop it in the comment section below. If you have any questions, you can put them there also. If you have any other questions, maybe we can answer them at Hopkins.ag.service, where you can find my contact info, or in the description below. You can feel free to reach out, and I thank you for watching. Have a great day.